Good morning and happy Sabbath, Covenant Advent Church. And good morning and happy Sabbath to those of you who've joined us online. Welcome, welcome, ever welcome. Blessed Sabbath day. We will now start our divine worship service. And I will ask you to please take up your hymnals as we turn to hymn number 2. Oh, I think we sang that one before. Yeah, 208. We'll sing hymn number 208. Hymn 208. There'll be no dark valley when Jesus comes. There'll be no dark valley when Jesus comes. There'll be no dark valley when Jesus comes to gather his loved ones home. To gather his loved ones home. To gather his loved ones home. There'll be no dark valley when Jesus comes to gather his loved ones home. There'll be no more sorrow when Jesus comes. There'll be no more sorrow when Jesus comes, but a glorious morrow when Jesus comes to gather his loved ones home. To gather his loved ones home. To gather his loved ones home. There'll be no dark valley when Jesus comes to gather his loved ones home. There'll be songs of greeting when Jesus comes. There'll be songs of greeting when Jesus comes, and a joyful meeting when Jesus comes to gather his loved ones home. To gather his loved ones home. To gather his loved ones home. There'll be no dark valley when Jesus comes to gather his loved ones home. Amen. We'll now turn to our introit, hymn number 0. Please turn to hymn number 0 as we sing our introit, Almighty Father.
us kneel and pray. Our Father who art in heaven, we are so thankful, dear Lord, that truly you have called us to glory, you called us to majesty, you called us, dear Lord, to be your royal priesthood. Pray that you may bless us, dear Lord, as you elevate our minds and our hearts, as we worship thee, we worship the true Creator God. This is our prayer in Jesus' name, amen. Good morning again, and welcome to Covenant Advent Church midday service, as we look into more health, more how God establish and uplift his people. Also want to welcome online New York United Sabbath-day Adventist Church, and I pray that God may bless all of you wherever you are. We'll continue our worship service by reading Deuteronomy Chapter 6, verse 4 through 6. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is one Lord. And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy might. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in your heart, in thine heart. And thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up. And thou shalt bind them as for a sign upon thine hand, and they shall be as a frontlet between thine eyes. And thou shalt write them upon the posts of thy house and on thy gates. So I pray God may bless us as we follow these words and receive the blessings that will be ours if we follow them and do according to the instructions of the Lord. We'll continue by singing hymn number 4, Praise My Soul, the King of Heaven. Hymn number 4, may God bless you.
Let the congregation rise as we sing our opening hymn, hymn number 4. Praise my soul, the King of heaven, to his feet thy tribute bring, ransomed, healed, restored, forgiven, who like thee his praise should sing. Praise him, hallelujah, praise the everlasting King. Praise him for his grace and favor to our fathers in distress. Praise him still the same forever, slow to chide and swift to bless. Praise him, hallelujah, glorious in his faithfulness. Tenderly he shields and spares us, well our feeble frame he knows. In his hands he gently bears us, rescues us from all our foes. Praise him, hallelujah, widely as his mercy flows. Angels help us to adore him, ye behold him face to face. Sun and moon bow down before him, dwellers all in time and space. Praise him, hallelujah, praise with us the God of praise. Amen. You may be seated.
This time, Sister Tamara will be doing our sharing. So our sharing, thanks.
Good morning and happy Sabbath once again. This morning's sharing is coming from Testimonies to the Church, Volume 7. Testimonies to the Church, Volume 7, page 135. And it reads, Let the diet reform be progressive. Let the people be taught how to prepare food without the use of milk or butter. Tell them that the time will soon come when there will be no safety in using eggs, milk, cream, or butter, because disease in animals is increasing in proportion to the increase of wickedness among men. The time is near when, because of the iniquity of the fallen race, the whole animal creation will groan under the diseases that curse our earth. God will give his people ability and tact to prepare wholesome food without these things. Let our people discard all unwholesome recipes. Let them learn how to live healthfully, teaching to others what they have learned. Let them impart this knowledge as they would Bible instruction. Let them teach the people to preserve the health and increase the strength by avoiding the large amount of cooking that has filled the world with chronic invalids. By precept and example, make it plain that the food which God gave Adam in his sinless state is the best for man's use as he seeks to regain that sinless state. Once again, this reading came from Testimonies to the Church, Volume 7, page 135.
At this time, we'll be having our prayer requests and reading and prayer also for the offering. So if you have any prayer requests at this time, you could share it on any of the social media platform, or you could text it to 973-995-6855. All of a sudden, I'm going to have to start writing it down. Probably need to see it in the flesh. 997-6855. So 973-997-6855. Sorry for that. So you could text our prayer request, and I'll read a scripture here. It says in 1 Chronicles chapter 16, verse 27, glory and honor are in his presence. Strength and gladness are in his place. Give unto the Lord, ye kindred of the people. Give unto the Lord glory and strength. Give unto the Lord the glory due unto his name. Bring an offering and come before him. Worship the Lord in the beauty of holiness. And so when we worship the Lord, we worship him in the beauty of holiness. We come, bow down, and we bring an offering, a thank, blessing our part in the upliftment of humanity, in the upbuilding of our fellow human beings. And this is what we do from week to week, from Sabbath to Sabbath. We partake in the salvation of humanity. We partake in the preaching of the Word of God by our support of not only those who are preaching it, but the vehicles, the institution, the facilities that are important to make this all possible. So this is our support. And I want to say that I appreciate your support in this time when the health message is so important and the other things that we preach are so important, that you continue to support. And I appreciate your support. And as I say, wherever your heart is, that's where your treasures are at. And I'm thankful for you to share some of your treasures with us here to continue to bless us. So at this time, I'll ask Sister tomorrow if we have any prayer requests.
Prayer request from Brother Ernesto for all who have and are recovering from COVID-19 healing.
Yes.
For Brother Craig, a prayer of thanksgiving or thanks to God for healing.
Okay.
Sister Martha extends or submits a prayer of thanksgiving. My brother has been granted another year of life.
Okay. Praise the Lord.
And also for a prayer request asking to keep Sister Yvonne and her husband in prayers.
Okay.
And Sister Janine has a prayer of thanksgiving, and also prayer for continued health and strength for frontline workers.
Amen. to all fighters in distress. Amen. So we'll sing 671 because I want to sing a song. 671 as we come to you in prayer. May God bless us with mercy as we bring our petitions to Him. 671 as we come in prayer. Let us kneel as thy people. It is a privilege and a blessing, dear Lord, to come to Thee, asking, dear Lord, for the various petitions that have been brought forward and for the blessings, dear Lord, that you alone can give to us. We acknowledge, dear Lord, your greatness and your strength and your power. We're thankful, dear Lord, to serve a God that we experience not just through intellectual assent, but also through the practical things of this life. As we observe, dear Lord, so much troubles in this life, but we know, dear Father, that this is part of the whole narrative of sin and that you're still in charge. I pray, Lord, your blessings and hands upon all of us, dear Lord, as we are moving closer, dear Lord, to the consummation of things. And we're seeing, dear Lord, that men's heart have becoming darkened and more dark, and that the evils, dear Lord, are so much the disregard, dear Lord, for life and the holding up, dear Lord, in a supreme way for material possession. It's sad to watch, but it's what we know will be happening. Yet, dear Lord, you call us to love you more than anything else and to love our fellow human beings as we love ourselves, love our lives, and we love our prosperity, but we love, dear Lord, others. May you bless us, Lord, and continue to help us, dear Lord, to care for each other. I pray a special blessing on all those who are here present, that you may bless them in their homes as they worship Thee, as they serve Thee, and as they take care of their families, that your Spirit may continue to tabernacle with them. I pray, dear Lord, blessing upon Brother Ernesto and the continued recovery of those who have catch COVID-19, and pray that you may continue to bless us in our effort to reach more with, dear Lord, the truth of the health message, a natural way to take care of the body. I pray, dear Lord, for Brother Craig, that you may be with him as he continue to pray for healing and for blessing. Pray for Sister Martha, as she's thankful to be able to enjoy life and enjoy the sight of and the companionship of her brother to see another year. I pray for Sister Yvonne, that you may continue to bless her as she and her family, and we all go through different trials and troubles, that you may be with us, dear Lord, and continue to be a source of comfort and not make the troubles of life get to us to the point that we might lose faith or lose hope. But you may be with us, dear Lord, that we might continue to look up and to draw nearer to Thee. Pray for those who are on the front lines, as Sister Genevieve requested, that you may be with them as they're under severe stress, seeing sickness, seeing death, seeing humanity at its worst. How much so, dear Lord, these things can get us down. But I pray, dear Lord, you may be with us and toughen us up, strengthen us in our minds and in our bodies, that we might deal with these things and know that this was not the intention. We did not intend for us to suffer, but it is sin. It's the devil. I pray that you may bless us, dear Lord, as we continue to work and to try to be gainfully employed, that you may continue to be upon us, be upon our minds, that we might continue, dear Lord, to use the skills and talents that you have given to us and to continue to develop them. I thank you, dear Lord, for your blessing and your continued increase in our lives and giving us an opportunity that we are being able, dear Lord, to return a faithful tithe and offering because you have blessed us and increased us. I pray, dear Lord, that the words that we continue to preach here and to preach individually, that it might continue to change hearts and minds, that they might see things the way you see things and live the way you would have them to live a blessed life. We pray, dear Lord, a blessing upon us, blessing upon the words that are about to be spoken. I pray, dear Father, that the words of our mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, and that we might draw closer to thee after all this is said and done. This is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Hear our prayers, O Lord. Hear our prayers, O Lord. Incline thine ear to us and grant us thy peace. Amen.
Our topic for this afternoon here, we're continuing with our theme, and our topic is plant-based diet, and we're looking at vegan, vegetarian. So plant-based diet, and we're going to be talking about why vegan, vegetarian, as we look at this subject matter. And so very important topic for this afternoon. Last week, just to remind you before I pray here, last week again, last Sabbath I was looking at contagious disease, and I'd explain very importantly that there's diseases that when we catch, we are unclean animals, as you know, we don't chew our cud and we don't have cloven foot. So we have diseases that become contagious to others. And so some more I'm going to cover is a little bit of that, but everything I'm going to focus on is more so why we have to be careful of flesh and the reasons why, our reasons why. So plant-based diet, vegan and vegetarian, and since we already prayed, we'll just go straight in to our subject. So the superior results when partaking of plant-based plants directly. So I'm not going to go into fully that part of the presentation because the upcoming weeks I'll be looking at, in the evening, I'll be looking at antioxidants and why you should partake of high amount of antioxidants. Antioxidants are those colors that we see in the food that is on the board right now. And again, I just want to welcome New York United and the members there and continue blessing upon you. As a matter of fact, I might say here before I go forward that yesterday was a privilege and blessing to be in New York City and to be with Pastor Whiteman and some of the members from New York United as they mourn the loss of sister or mother Phillips. So Mother Phillips had passed away. She was 98 years old, and it was a blessing to honor mark the passing of her life, a person that was always a blessing to worship with and in the afternoon to sing with, especially tomorrow would sing with her. So just wanted to note that, always a blessing to interact with people that are a blessing. So we back to our presentation now. So the superiorness. So I'm not going to be talking about per se the antioxidant because in the upcoming evening presentation, I'll be talking about the importance of having food with color in it, and these foods come from plant-based source. But I'm going to talk primarily more about this thing now. In John 10, verse 10, the thief cometh not, but to steal, to kill, to destroy. I am come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. So God want to give us a more abundant life. And part of this is that we partake of the richness and the fatness that plants give us. But hence, I'm going to be talking about why we need to avoid a diet that is very deficient and anemic. So many people will say, why would somebody eat a plant-based diet? Why would somebody consider eating a plant-based diet? And some of the common reasons, which I'm not going to focus on, but I throw them up here on the screen for you here, is animal cruelty. Animal cruelty is one of the big reasons why people say, they're going to stop eating animals because the animals are such abuse. You just have to grow them to kill them. So this is not our focal point, but this is, you can find a lot of material out there on that. So I don't think it's necessary for me to talk about that. Another important thing, which is what in the upcoming weeks I'm going to talk about, why is it best per se to get your nutrients firsthand? So in other words, normally if you eat an animal, the animal has to eat the grass, and then you eat the animal, and then you get the nutrients in the grass secondhand. But if you could get the nutrients of the grass in your body, then first, and then you'll be as healthy as an ox. And as you know very clearly, many people have pointed this out, the animals that eat meat all day long, you can't use them for work. They're not strong. They're not going to be strong like I guess a gorilla, a chimpanzee, an ox, and so forth. You don't use them to plow field. They're just there for decoration and to kill things, like a tiger or a lion. So because they eat their meat and their food primarily, their nutrients second, and our ox eat its food first hand. It gets its food first from the grass. Now somebody say, well, we don't eat grass, our bodies can't digest grass. It's true. But as you know, one of the most powerful things you can do if you have cancer, you would use like barley grass juice or wheatgrass juice or any type of grass. Make remember there's a grass family, and especially grass that produce food like barley, rice, all these kind of grass. They're potent nutrients if you can get the juice, the chlorophyll in your body, because the chlorophyll is similar to blood, except the blood has an iron in the middle, something like that. So it is a molecular structure of it. So if literally you're taking the green on the plant, you're getting the plant blood. That's the number one way to overcome any type of serious diseases. So in the future, in the weeks, we're going to be covering that very thoroughly. We're going to spend a lot of time there. So second-hand food nutrients is best to avoid. It's best to eat the food first. So you can eat the soybean first. You can eat the wheat first. Anything first, the corn first, instead of feeding the corn to the animal and then eat the animal. Getting nutrients second-hand. So that's a very good reason. And that's the reason I say I'm not going to deal too much with right now. Another important reason that many people point out to that we won't spend much time is the unsanitary conditions they are raised. So the animals are raised in just terrible, they raise a pig like it's a pig. And then you take that animal, try to clean it up and eat it. This is causing a lot of disease to continue. So we're going to look at some reasons why we shouldn't in the upcoming minutes here. So diet before and after the moral fall of man. So when we talk about the diet before the fall of man was a diet that had to do with a perfect world. So when Adam was in the garden, Adam and Eve, they had a diet that was a plant-based diet. After the fall, meat became part of the diet for various different reasons I'll talk about. So when we think about the diet before the fall, it was a clean diet. It wasn't a diet that had to murder things to eat or to survive. Sin caused an introduction to animal-based diet, where things have to die. There has to be blood and guts and gore in order for us to eat. As we move towards the end of time, God has a message from a people who are saying, look, it is not necessary for us to subsist of dead carcass anymore. And so the correlation between sin and a predatory behavior where we go after animals to survive is connected. But before we get to that point, notice in Genesis 1:29. Genesis 1:29, what was the diet before sin? The diet before sin, Genesis 1:29 says, and God said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in the which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat. So Moses clarifying and educating us as what was the original diet Adam was given. And it was a diet that was based upon plants, primary plants that had seeds. And this was what was meat. So when we think about meat, we normally think about animal. But all animals actually eat plant to survive, even tigers and lions. Now somebody said, no, that's also they eat meat. Well, in the sense that they're eating it, everything eaten is second-hand. Everybody subsists of plant. So something have to eat a plant, and then the animal, the shark, all those predatory animals will eat the thing that eat plant-based. So everything really is plant-based, that is flesh, because flesh really is not good to subsist off flesh. So if you notice Adam, when he was built, and he was built in a perfect world, and Adam was at his full vigor, Adam had a plant-based diet. And when we want to go back to full vigor, when we want to be able to have good health as we age, or even when we're young, the best diet is the perfect diet. So this is the perfect diet. Now, after sin, God introduced, because notice here in Genesis 1:29, everything in this diet is a fruit-based diet. In other words, fruits, nuts, seeds, grains, technically are fruit in the sense of it's the offspring. So the plant produces something, but the plant don't die. So the plant did not have to die in order for Adam to eat. So in a perfect world, nothing died so that I should eat. After sin, most actually that change. And this is where this concept of death come in, where something has to die or be sacrificed so that I should live. But in a perfect world, Adam would not go over to a plant and kill the plant and eat the plant. He would just go over to the plant and take the fruit of it. So flaxseed, the seed would be a fruit of the plant. It would be an offspring, but the plant does not die. And that fruit could produce of its kind. So in other words, Adam would go over to a mango tree, pull the mango off. He could eat the mango, the flesh, the meat of the mango, the flesh of the mango, and he would not eat it and then plant the seed, and a new mango tree will come up that will bear, probably millions over the course of a lifetime, if life would have lasted forever. Mangoes. So not only does the food would not die, or the plant would not die, but the plant will go on to have more fruit or more children. Does that make sense? So everything in a plant-based diet was life, perpetuate life. In the sin diet that came in is death, perpetuate life. Something has to die, so I eat. And this is where we're moving away from. We have moved away from that. And I'm encouraging you to move away from that type of diet, because then there is death in the pot. We don't want death in our pot. We want life in our pot. So notice in Genesis 3, verse 17 and 18, this is now after the fall, after man sinned. Now death was introduced in order to keep me and you alive. And unto Adam he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree of which I commanded thee, saying, thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for thy sake. In sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. So hard work was going to be introduced. So when you do hard work, what it is, things break down. There's an accidents going to be introduced. But yet, when you read these texts, and this is the difficulty with God, when God speaketh thunders and lightning, and sinners get confused to a certain degree. And the reason why God does this, because he has to keep us in the straight and narrow. But notice here a blessing, but in this blessing, it could seem like it's a curse. Notice here, hard work is not a curse, it's a blessing. Notice here also in Genesis 3:18, thorns also and thistle shall it bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. So it says, thorns and thistle shall it bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. So in this, it can sound like it's a curse, like, wow, man, Adam is going to have a hard time reaping. You see that? So when Adam goes to the orange tree, right? He goes to the orange tree, and he goes to pick 3 oranges. And as he goes to the orange tree to pick the oranges, there's thorns on it, there's pricks. And if he's not careful, he's going to hurt himself. So one could feel like that's against us. But it's not against us, because what you realize is that because now sin is introduced, everything in life has to be able to protect itself. And within that protection comes things that are dangerous to us. But as long as you understand the dangers that are there for the protection of the things in nature, you understand the intention is not to kill us, but because sin is introduced, now even the plants have to protect themselves. The animals have to protect themselves. Everything now has to have thorns and thistles and horns and all these things, because now you're trying to kill them, they're trying to kill you to stay alive. Everybody's trying to stay alive. That's what sin introduced. Sin introduced death, and death introduced protection. That's why human beings invent bulletproof vests and guns and everything like that, because other human beings try to kill them to survive. Right? So thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. Now the herb of the field now are introduced, because if you eat the herb, the fruit is not going to be produced. So if I have to go out there and juice barley, well, I'm not concerned with the offspring. I'm concerned with the phytonutrients in the barley so that I can stay alive. So now I'm going to have to kill that plant to live. If I go and I eat amaranth or I eat callaloo, same genus, same family, I'm not worried about the amaranth flower. I'm worried about eating the green leaf so that I can stay alive. So my focal point is to stay alive, and I'm willing to sacrifice something to stay alive. And this is part of the thing. But what God has blessed us with the advancement of science, we can look into that plant and we can realize, wait a minute, I can get more nutrients, I can get more protein from, say, something like a spirulina that I can get from any meat. I can get more protein guaranteed per pound from soybean than I can get from beef. And so with this advanced knowledge, we realize, wait a second here. You mean there's more protein and life in green leafy vegetables than anything else out there? And the answer is yes. So we know now that the original diet that was given by God, fruits, nuts, seeds, grains, and tubers and all, anything that we could eat it and the thing doesn't die, and life continue to perpetuate, was actually way superior. And now we know also that even when God gave now Adam and Eve the greens, he gave it now to protect, because now everything is going to go into fight mode, right? They have to protect themselves. But in order for them to protect themselves, now we're going to be introducing things like viruses and bacteria and stuff. Everything now has to focus on staying alive. Their ability to stay alive could kill us. Think about it. Our immune system is made to keep us alive. But yet, if we're deficient in nutrients, we could have a cytokine storm and we die from something trying to keep us alive. Is the immune system is the problem? No. It's my deficiency in nutrients is the problem. That's why we go to a plant-based diet. Some more reasons. It's the same thing. The sun is made to keep us alive by feeding our skin vitamin D and our fat cells vitamin D, fat storage. But yet, if you don't have good nutrients inside your body, you don't have the antioxidants that come from carrot and ginger and turmeric and all these things in your skin, when the skin hit when the sunlight hit your skin, the sunlight damages your skin and cause cancer. But if you have these nutrients, they're a protective layer that is added to your skin that make you become healthier. So the diet that was given to Adam is the diet that was right. And when Adam entered into sin, and now his body is going to be under more pressure from oxidants, Adam now was introduced to plants and to leaves and to roots and to barks to keep him alive. And so we believe in this and we partake of this and we partake of the plant because we need high volumes of this and low volumes of anything that's going to poison us, because we're simply trying to stay alive. So if somebody asks, why is it that we focus on plants and why we don't focus on, well, the animals are being abused? Because we're primarily dealing with health and all to stay away from disease. And you'll see from the rest of this presentation, and if you watch last Sabbath presentation, very potent midday service presentation on why we should stay away from certain unclean foods. Now, as a current, I always like to give a current incident that happened to illustrate how important it is to avoid certain practices. Here's a good example of one. This happened in last year, March 16th last year. So it's entitled, this is from NewJersey.com, and it's entitled 1 million pounds of smuggled pork from China seized at New Jersey port. So 1 million pounds of smuggled pork from China seized at New Jersey port. So I throw this back here because I want to show you that, stuff coming from China that has to do with meat is not new. This has been a problem and it's going to continue to be a problem. When you have a system and a philosophy where it's business over any other consideration, morality is not part of it because it's There's no concept of Christianity and morals and stuff. It's just whatever is expedient to make money, then you do anything. So notice here some excerpts from the article. Federal officials at Newark Port of Entry seized 1 million pounds of pork products allegedly smuggled from China in the biggest agricultural bust in American history. The raid of more than 50 shipping containers was an effort to stop the spread of African swine fever, a virus that has decimated China's pigs. Now, you've probably looked at this. Very important. I'll pause here a little bit. Because notice here, the virus is an African swine fever, and it is primarily contagious to pigs or swines. Now, I believe that through interaction and other things, that it's possible that this virus could jump to the human population. Or it's probably in it, they're just not detected. Just my saying here. Because this has been proven over again. Sooner or later, these viruses jump over. So notice it has decimated pigs in China. So there's all these Chinese pigs or pigs in China dying from the African swine fever, right? So now you have dead pigs. What do you do with the dead pigs? The meat was primarily cured, and the cargo containers were not refrigerated. So it's just some metal containers, no refrigeration. They just cure it. How they cure it? I don't know, smoke it or some other thing, right? And they're shipping 1 million of it to America last year. 1 million pounds, 50 containers, not refrigerated, just cured. The deadly disease, which does not affect humans, has never been detected among livestock in this country. So it's a deadly disease, not affect humans. It's a diseased carcass with a deadly fever. And 1 million pounds was sent because they were dying in China and decimated the thing. So they take these dead carcasses, they cure it, and they ship it to America to feed the American people who eat pig. This is the type of thing that's going on. So you're telling me how you're going to look at me straight in the face and tell me that dead pig that is cured, not refrigerated, coming all the way from China because they died by diseases. If this was sent into the American population, do you think it would cause disease? I'll pause here for you to think about this. Do you think this would cause people to get sick? Because they say, oh, they won't get sick from whatever. No, you kill the pig. No, you're eating an animal that is the most diseased animal in the world. Known diseased animal in the world. And it's died from a swine fever. They like to call them everything's from Africa. But anyhow, they call it an African swine fever. It's dead from a disease. Now they're gonna sell it to people. Think couldn't keep alive by itself. Do you think it would have affected people's health? 1 million pounds, 50 containers, not refrigerated, cured, quote unquote cured. This is the type of wickedness going on in our society. This is why I tell you, stay away from all these wicked foods. In Genesis 7, verse 1 through 3, and the Lord said unto Noah, come thou and all thy house into the ark, and these have I seen righteous before me in this generation. So you know the story of the ark, the flood. The flood story was a story that the flood happened for a whole year. So when you read the Bible, you calculate, you do your math, you quickly realize that, but not if you quickly realize, but if you read, you realize that the flood story, the narrative of the flood started when it started raining, by the time the water subside was a whole year. Now everything was destroyed. So this now created an emergency because, again, most of the food we eat are grown on a seasonal basis. So Noah now is going to have a situation, a flood in his hand, he's going to be in a ship for 1 year. Keep that in mind. The numbers will make sense if you go read the Bible and calculate. From the time they entered until the time the water subsides off the earth. Verse 2 says, every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by 7, the male and his female, and the beasts that are not clean by 2, the male and his female. Of fowls also of the air by 7, male and the female, to keep seed alive upon the face of all the earth. So Noah went into the ark, and the Lord led. Here the text says take, but we know the story that said the angel of the Lord led, Spirit of the Lord led the animals into the ark. If it was a goat, it would be 7 goats, female, male. If it was pig, it would be two, male and a female, that's it. No extra of those. They multiply and you don't need a lot of them. And also Noah was instructed that he could eat these animals. Now many people look at this and they say, see, Noah was given permission to eat. Well, what we understand here is that Noah was given permission because of an emergency. Now, why would it be an emergency? Because Noah will go into the ark, and imagine he goes into the ark, he's going to be there for 1 year. After the land on Mount Ararat, we don't know for the rest of the time the plains, when did the plains dry out. Then now, say Noah come out, Noah was a farmer, he would start farming. It would take a while for the crops to grow. We know that Noah grew grapes. So if you imagine growing grape right now, how long would it take you before the grape would reach harvest? And how long would it take you before you could start reaping any foods? Some foods it could take a few months, some food it could take a few years. If it was fruits, it could take up to even 3 to 4 or so years. So you can see there would be a while for Noah to have to subsist and live on food. And so at this point, the Lord gave Noah the opportunity or the right to be able to kill animals, lamb, clean animals, because that's why there was extra of those, to subside them, because he would have to be subsiding on food, non-plant-based food, for a few years. We don't know exactly how long, but we know minimum a year, and it will go on longer because for the growing cycle to kick in, then it will take a while. And then in between, I'm assuming you'll be able to find some things that stayed alive, because some things live. Because when the bird went, she came back and she found an olive tree. So you know some things survived, but most things would not have survived. And Moses went in the ark to keep seed alive. So I would not be surprised that Moses had carried some seeds into the ark. Other side note here, because we have a lot to go through, I'm going to try to get through it as fast as I can next, is that the Lord had to bring the animals into the ark. And many people believe why the Lord brought the animals into the ark was because the animals were genetically modified. And because if you can look up in history, you find they talk about amalgamation. And you hear the stories about artifacts that they find that refer to people like Methuselah, half snakehead, human body. In mythology, there's a lot of reference to half man, half horse, half man, half this. And I'm one of those people who really believe, so I say it here. I believe that this was what was going on. And look, remember Christ says, in the time of Noah, so shall it be in the time of the end. Well, what is we famous for in now? Genetical modified organism. You think about that, genetical modified organism, where we're modifying this organism by inserting like the DNA of, say, a bat or a mosquito or something into a tomato to make the tomato harder. So we are modifying plants, we're mixing species and creatures and things that never would mix, even in nature. We're mixing them together in labs. And what are we getting? Genetically modified organism. Things that are not supposed to go together. Snakes and human beings should not be mixed together. And so if you look at this is what was going on in the time of Noah. We're doing this in the end time, and this will precipitate wickedness that we've never seen before. And I believe this is what we're seeing, and we're going to see more of this because they're modifying, they're introducing insect genes into seeds and into nuts and into all kind of crazy stuff. And notice here, and I say this as a side note and an observation, we notice in the movies, they have moved more and more away from horror movies to more and more mutant movies, where they're telling the people that this mutant is healthy and he's strong. What we know with genetically modified organism, it doesn't get stronger, it get weaker. But they keep teaching the people that, look at the superhero from Marvel. He's a superhero and he's a mutant because somebody messed with his genetics. Well, look what they're going to do with the new virus as we move along. The new vaccination, they're going to give a vaccination where they genetically modify, put sequence inside of the gene, inside of the vaccine, to go inside of our body and genetically modify our body to fight off the disease. It's coming, brethren, because we're coming closer to the time of the end. So emergency food is what people believe that they should subsist of. And I too grew up eating emergency food, chicken, beef, that type of thing. Food that was given permission by given permission by God to Noah. Notice here emergency food. This is a statement I read from Second Testimonial to the Church, written by Ellen G. White. And here, notice what she says here, 100 years ago. Now, this statement is important. Probably the week after she wrote this, if you read this, you probably wouldn't be blown away. I'm blown away by this because this is 100 years. 100 years later, we're seeing effect in all the autism and the disabilities that is occurring, and all these weird diseases and all these cancers. Notice here, the fluids and flesh of these diseased animals are received directly into the blood and pass into the circulation of the human body and become fluid and flesh of the same. So we are partaking of the animal, and we eat the animal, and we are now, the animal now become part of us. Thus, humors, now that word humor is not where you laugh. Back then, that would be the word for what we call tumor. I guess they decided to put a T on it to make it separate. So humors, by 100 years ago, they referred to tumors as humors, are introduced into the system. So how does tumors get introduced into the system? By eating animal flesh. And if the person already has impure blood, it is greatly aggravated by the eating of the flesh of these animals. She's primarily talking about animals grown for food. The liability to take disease is increased tenfold by meat eating. So notice here, the liability to take in disease is increased tenfold. So if you want to increase any disease, and we're going to cover this in the next few minutes, you'll see that what you need to do is increase, you eat meat, and you increase your chances of getting any disease 10 times. The liability to take in disease is increased tenfold by meat eating. The intellectual, the moral, and the physical powers are depreciated by the habitual eating of flesh meat. Because remember, mango has meat. It's just we're talking about animal meat now. Meat eating deranges the system. It does what? It deranges the system, beclouds the intellect. So the person has meat on their brain, or tumor in their brains, and blunt the moral sensibility. We say to you, dear brethren and sister, dear brother and sister, your safest course is to let meat alone. So this is what I'm here telling you, that your safest course is to leave the flesh alone. You can do better without flesh. So foodborne illness, I take this from Stop Food Illnesses, stopfoodborneillness.org. Foodborne illness is an infection or irritation of the gastrointestinal, the GI tract, caused by food or beverage that contain harmful bacteria, parasites, viruses, or chemical. You'll find all of this is in meat, especially modern meat. Common foodborne illness symptoms include vomiting, diarrhea, abdominal pain, fever, and chills. Most foodborne illnesses are acute, meaning they happen suddenly and last a short time. And most people recover on their own without treatment. So remember, last week we covered contagious disease. We're not talking about contagious disease this week because I'm focusing on clean animals, not the unclean animals. If you watched last week, you would have understood what I'm talking about. Each year, an estimated 48 million people in the United States experience a foodborne illness. Foodborne illnesses cause 128,000 hospitalization, about 3,000 deaths in the United States. So just a recap before I go over some of these. So last week what I'd cover was that when you eat unclean animal, you get diseases that are contagious. Contagious in the sense that you eat the animal, you get the disease inside of you, and then you can pass the disease to human beings. When you eat clean animals, you get diseases that you keep to yourself primarily, except probably for tuberculosis, which really is difficult to transmit, but still transmittable. You keep the disease to yourself and you don't pass it on. So if you go back last week, you watched last week, you'll see I do a very clear coverage of that, where I show when you eat a pig, you catch swine flu, you can pass the swine flu on to somebody else. If you eat a chicken, you get salmonella, you don't pass it on to somebody else. You're not contagious. You just get sick to yourself. So the dangerous disease are the disease that you catch from animals that you eat that are unclean animals. The disease are dangerous, so you could kill you, but you don't pass it on. So you can eat this, but it's not good to eat it. Notice here the top 5 germs that cause illness from food eaten in the United States. Norovirus from contaminated food or water, an infectious person, or by touching contaminated surface. So a lot of people here, they have the stomach virus or stomach illness. This is norovirus they're catching. So it's good to not contaminate surface with meat and stuff like that. When you're cooking, you separate vegetables and meat and animal products separately. Another important one, salmonella. Infection usually occurs when a person eats food contaminated with feces of animals or humans carrying the bacteria. Salmonella outbreaks are commonly associated with eggs, meat, and poultry, right? So now, if you get salmonella, because remember, egg, meat, primarily we're talking about be like cows and stuff like that, and poultry, we would normally say this is the food that the Lord allowed Noah to eat. These are clean animals. But from these clean animals, you find that they're highly contagious, and you can get, when you eat them, you can get something like a salmonella. But if you catch salmonella, you catch it to yourself. You don't pass it on to me. If you catch swine flu or avian flu or any of these things, you can't pass it on to me. So your action directly affect me. In this situation, your action primarily affect you. Hope I'm going to leave that alone. Hopefully you get that is clear. Clostridium perfringens is a commonly found in raw meat and poultry. That's another important one. Many people get sick from this. Campylobacter bacteria can get in your system if you eat uncooked poultry again, and you eat food that has touched raw or undercooked poultry. So notice again, a lot of disease come from the chicken. But this thing here, when you get it, you get sick to yourself for the most part. All right, you don't pass it on. Staphylococcus aureus, or staph infection, found in the upper respiratory tract, is another infection that you can get. I just wanted to list that there. Some other germs that are important to note include E. coli. E. coli strain are harmless, but some can cause serious food poisoning. And the Shiga toxin produced in E. coli is a bacterium that can cause severe foodborne diseases. Primary source of this bacteria outbreak is raw or undercooked ground meat produce, raw milk, fecal contamination of vegetables. So you've heard about outbreaks with lettuce or with scallions and stuff like that. Almost all the time what it is that there is some feces that got on the vegetables because the animals go in the field, poop on the vegetables, and they pass it on to the human being via the vegetable. It's not the vegetable that per se causing an outbreak, it's a contaminant from the animals. Notice undercooked ground beef, so again, this is clean meat. Raw milk, this is why they fix all of this problem with E. coli and other diseases by doing pasteurization, where Pasteur came up with this idea that probably if we cook it, will kill the bacteria, and so the animal, the cow, doesn't pass on to the human being its E. coli via the milk. So notice again, these are clean animals. So if you think about it now, if you're going through the year and you avoid all these animals and their products, what you're doing is avoiding the possibility of this contaminated food getting into you and cause you to get sick. Listeria, I've mentioned this here, raw vegetables that have been contaminated from soil or from contaminated manure. Used as fertilizer, so that's why if you do gardening, you have to be careful. What some people do if they use manure, what they do, they'll kiln bake the feces to kill the bacteria or the pathogen so that it doesn't contaminate the vegetable, and then they get sick by eating contaminated vegetables that were contaminated with listeria. So also unpasteurized milk or food made with unpasteurized milk. So when you see people drinking a lot of raw milk because they say it's going to get them healthy, watch them. They're going to get sick, and they're getting sick. And they're dying from it. Because this is why we came up with the pasteurization, because we wanted to kill these bacteria. But if you avoid this and you just eat some plant-based milk, you're good. You're good. Certain processed food, such as soft cheese, hot dogs, deli meat, have been contaminated after processing. Another form of E. coli I mentioned there, this one is called Vibrio, another disease here. Most people become infected by eating raw or undercooked shellfish, particular oyster. So again, you have this thing now. This is enough to see. You partake of it. This is one I know. I say I'm doing clean, but also I just want to point out that many of these things you get sick, not necessarily pass it on, but again from unclean shellfish. Tuberculosis is another big one. Spread when a person with an active TB disease in their lung cough or sneeze on someone else. So remember, we too can pass disease because we have diseases because we are animal. We're flesh. We're not plants. So we have high rates of disease ourselves that we can pass on. But that's not our burden here today. But I wanted to show you as tuberculosis as an example. So someone else inhales the expelled droplets and which contain TB. So this is what a good reason why you shouldn't eat human beings, because they might give you TB. Although TB is spread in a similar way to cold or flu, it is not as contagious. So even when you have TB as a human being, you don't pass it as easily. One of the variants of TB, because there are multiple different types of TB from different animals, is M. bovis, which is give me 1 second here if I can get this word right. It's a Mycobacterium bovis, which is from the bovine, the cows, was once a common cause of tuberculosis. But the introduction of pasteurization or pasteurized milk has almost completely eliminated this as a public health problem in developed countries. So TB was something that was a big problem until they realized, if we just cook the milk, we kill the TB in the milk. So if you just avoid milk back in the past, imagine people who were believing the health message and didn't drink milk, they were avoiding getting TB. You see how powerful that is? So this is why pasteurization eliminated TB in most places that are developed. Now, in a lot of poor countries, they're still eating raw milk. Can you imagine going over the cow and squirt some milk and you're squirting in TB, tuberculosis in your mouth? Now, in the United States, the majority of tuberculosis causes in people are caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis, M. tuberculosis. Mycobacterium bovis, M. bovis, is another mycobacterium that can cause TB disease in people. M. bovis is most commonly found in cattle and other animals, such as bison, elk, deer. So you could go out there, shoot that deer with a bow and arrow, and you say, look at it, I'm eating free range. This thing is ranging free. Or get some bison or some elk, and you're eating now the tuberculosis. So then the person come down with tuberculosis could not so potently pass it on to somebody because they're flesh too. And they be affected the TB, but mainly what they're going to be affecting is themselves because they're eating all this TB-filled deer or elk or bison, free ranging around with this tuberculosis. In people, M. bovis causes TB disease that can affect the lungs, lymph node, and other parts of the body. However, as with MT tuberculosis, not everyone infected with M. bovis becomes sick. People who are infected but not sick have what is called latent tuberculosis infection. So basically, they're asymptomatic. So they don't have it. Now, look, I believe it's possible for you to pass it on. Not going to be that difficult. One last example I'm going to give you of a clean meat disease that is good in this section here, because I have way more to go. That is emergency food. Remember, this is emergency food that Noah was given to eat, but Noah now is going to be introduced to a lot of viruses and pathogens that are dangerous. Another example of this is mad cow disease. Now, what is mad cow disease? It is it's called bovine spongiform encephalopathy, which BSE. So BSE is a famous disease that came around. I believe it's still here. It looks like a person having Alzheimer's disease. So if you look at Alzheimer's disease, that's like in human being. If you look at Jakob-Creutzfeldt disease, that's what they call it in human being. If you look at Alzheimer's disease, it's the same thing. Now, how they got rid of mad cow in America is that they only kill animals that are young. They don't kill old cows, because the older cows, the more they find mad cow disease. As the cow get older, become as in the cow version of Alzheimer's disease. So they have figured out how to tweak the system, I think, to trick the system. So the average person out there eating cow, they're eating cows that have not fully developed mad cow, but it's in them. Now, what is mad cow? What caused mad cow? Mad cow was caused by taking grind up either sheep or cow after the cow die and feeding it to cows. Now, if you remember, cows are vegetarian. They were created like you and I to be plant-based eaters. When you introduce animals to plant-based eaters, they become more diseased. This is why Energy Wise says it become 10 times more disease. So you want to decrease your disease load, remove the animals from your diet. So anyhow, the cows were fed cows or other animals. So they say the animal died. There's an animal, you find this in the ground, in your farm, it dropped dead. They will take the cow, ground that cow up or that sheep up, and then feed it again. They mix it with other feed and feed it to the cows. The cows now develop what we call a disease that make their brain look spongy and look like a sponge. You ever see a sponge with a hole in it? That's what happened. The brain will start looking like holes in the brain. And the cow would have I'll read it to you there. It's transmittable, slowly progressive, degenerative, and fatal disease affecting central nervous system of adults. Now, primary, how it's transmittable? If you eat mad cows that are infected with mad cow, and you eat that cow, you eat the disease inside of you. Then your brain starts to become spongy and you start acting as you have Alzheimer's. This is why I believe there's so many people you meet in their 50s and they start to show symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. This is from a clean animal. And they're eating this spongy form. Now, if they go now to the American, is it Red Cross, but the people who take blood, the blood banks, and they give the blood to the blood bank, that blood now has the spongy form in the blood. Now that person takes it in, now it's transmittable because the blood of the human being going to the other human being with the mad cow and they become mad. But when you normally have it, for the most part, you don't transmit it. So if I have mad cow, other than me having something similar to Alzheimer's disease, I'm gonna be mad. And somebody gonna say, "You're mad, bro." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm mad," but they're not gonna catch it because they touch me. What it is, if they get my blood, that's when it's transmittable. So it's a degenerative disease, fatal disease affecting the central nervous system. That's why for years I've been predicting that there will be, and there is more Alzheimer's disease and dementia in our population, because what it is, they trick the system and trick the people by killing cows that are 4 years and younger. If they would just wait one more year, they'll find that in the brain and in the spinal column of these cows, that's what they had found out, they had mad cow disease. So by killing them before 4 years old, boom, they said there's no detectable mad cow. You eat it, and then at 50, 60, you see people, they start to have certain diseases because what happened, the nervous system is being destroyed by the mad cow inside of them. And you go look that up, you'll see what I'm saying is rock solid. And in the future, I'll do a seminar on that to cover that. So some of the reasons why, real quickly, I'm going to try to summarize as quick as I can. Some of these are the reasons why you must be aware of the dangers in our modern foods that we eat. One of the examples, and I'm not going to go through all of this, but I put it up on the board so you can read it for yourself later if you so desire, is dioxins or dioxin-like compound, DLCs, are byproduct of various industrial processes. And they get into the environment and pollute the environment. And they are products that cause reproductive and developmental damage in all of us, male, female. They cause immune system damage. They interfere with hormones and also causes cancers. And most of the time you take in dioxin-like compounds in the form of foods from animal, meat, dairy, and fish predominate this list, and it depends on the country. So when you look at the industrial runoff, we produce so much chemical every year. Those chemicals get into the waterway, damages the fish, get into the sea, damages the fish. You're looking at a piece of meat, but what you're looking at is an animal, especially fish, that has a lot of chemicals way beyond mercury. So you see a lot of people now with all these type of immune problem, hormonal problem, what is it? They're getting it from the animal. All that industrial runoff is into the system. This, again, you can read this in your own time. I'm just going to scan through a lot of this because of the sake of time. Now, you can look at this is the environmental working group, and it talks about meat. And notice I'm going to read the first part here. Say a number of widespread environmental toxins build up in the animal tissue are found in meat, sometimes at high level. And these meats, as they build up into the system, they tend to accumulate in fat of food producing animals, consumption of animal derived foods, and primarily it's going to build up in meat, poultry, eggs, fish, and dairy. So when you look at fat, because what does fat do? Fat holds chemical, all chemical, hormones, various different type of industrial chemical. So when you look at the food, remember the Bible, the Lord says for us to, you have to trim the fat off the food. Whether it be chicken, cut the flesh off, the skin off the fish. Why? Because in the fish skin, in the fat of all these animals, in your fat and my fat, the more fat we have on the body is the more you find that the fat has chemicals built up in, the more chemical we interact with. So when you eat the animal, what you're doing, and you're part, say if somebody eats chicharron, or what they call the skin or the fat of pigs that are fried, all that fat contained is just concentrated industrial chemical, dioxins and stuff like that. And now they're going to have neurological problem, hormonal problem that they're not going to be able to fix because now they have it. Now the more fat they have on the system is the more toxic chemicals, because we as animals store toxins and hormones and stuff in our fat. Like an example, we store even vitamin D3 in our fat. So the more fat is the more storage. That's why you notice you could have a person who have the same BMI and they're more stout or fat in a foreign country than in America. You find that the one here has more cellulitis. In other words, you see the dimple in the fat. And all that dimple in the fat, so the person has 50 pounds extra worth of fat on them. You could have a person in a place that is not interacting with all these dangerous chemicals. They have lower rates. And you have somebody here, they interact with all these dangerous chemicals and they have more dimple in the fat. Now, why? Because the thicker the fat, the fat is supposed to stay in a fairly consistent shape. But as the fat has too much toxic chemical, the fat now start to go rancid, or what you say, rancid is a proper word for fat. They go and spoil. And it is basically degenerating and falling apart. And as it fall apart, it creates like pockets because it's basically collapsing. And you have those dimples and stuff like that. You'll notice what I'm seeing. Don't look too much, but you can see what I'm talking about when it comes down to those fat storage. The person that has more healthy fat and less of these chemicals, their fat becomes more smooth and straight. It doesn't have that heap of cellulitis and dimples and all that stuff. That's a whole other presentation. So notice here, among fish, tuna, farm salmon are particular concern. In 2004, analysis of 2 metric ton of farmed and wild salmon purchased from stores around the world showed consistently a significant higher concentration of PCBs, which is a form of dioxin, another form of chemical that is in our environment. Dioxin and other widely banned insecticide that were found. And notice here, on average, farm salmon had stored and store support this finding. On average, salmon had 16 times the dioxin like PCBs found in wild salmon, 4 times the level of beef, and 3.4 times the level found of other seafood. So when you think about it, you buy like a canned tuna or a canned whatever. Those are some of the most scary stuff that you can buy because they're not going to be tested. Another important thing to note is that in the system of nature, where the planktons are eaten by smaller fish and the smaller fish are eaten by bigger fish, and by the time you get up the line, you get to sharks and the other big fish. When they test these fishes, what they find is a concentration of industrial chemicals in the larger fish, because the food is being concentrated, so also is the toxins. And by the time you get to the larger fish, there's a large accumulation of chemicals like mercury. This is why they say they can take your ear follicle and test your ear follicle and tell you how much fish you ate in the last 2 weeks. That's a fascinating thing. They can just take your ear follicle, test it to find out how much mercury is in your hair. And by doing this, they can tell you how much fish you ate in the last 2 weeks, because the fish you eat will accumulate the mercury in your body. That's how potent what we're talking about is. And as you know, mercury is a toxic chemical, but it's concentrated in fish, and you get it when you eat large fish. And so this is why when you eat those fish, you can read the rest of that there. Few texts here. Notice here, Matthew chapter 24, verse 7. It says, "For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famine, pestilence, and earthquake in diverse places." So what we're seeing a lot is what we call pestilence. And so to avoid the pestilence, one of the best things to do is be on a plant-based diet, vegan diet, vegetarian diet, 100% plant-based diet, whatever you call it. Romans chapter 8, verse 22 says, "For we know that the whole creation groaneth and travaileth in pain together until now." So we're seeing this, that as remember, we are different from evolutionists, we're creationists. The evolutionists believe things are getting better and things are improving, right? Because things are evolving and getting better. As a creationist, I believe that things are getting worse, and that when Adam was created, he was on a perfect diet. He was on a plant-based diet. That was what his body was created to do. As we started eating animals, the years got cut short, and now many people can't even make it to a certain age without being infested with diseases. So what happened? Primarily the introduction of meat. Meat cut the years that human beings live. And so when we cut the meat, what we find is that we do healthier at the older age. That's where we want to be. So the liability, again, I'm going to read this thing from what we read earlier. The liability to take disease is increased tenfold by meat eating. The intellectual, the moral, the physical powers are depressed by the habitual use of flesh meat. When this was written 100 years ago, the concepts of refrigeration and pasteurization, all these things to give us the opportunity to eat more animal was not there. And imagine, then she said it was tenfold. Imagine now where foods were grown more naturally. Imagine what's going on now. Meat eating deranges the system, beclouds the intellect, and blunt the moral sensibilities. So we want to be able to avoid this. Again, here's another example of a set of chemicals that are concentrated in the blood and in the fat, which is chlorinated pesticide. A good example of chlorinated pesticide, and these pesticides are used on grains and fungicides. So somebody said, wait a minute, they use on grain as fungicides. If they use on grains, why does it affect animals? Because remember, we have the ability to concentrate them in our fat. And all these pesticides run off into the water stream as rainfall. So notice here, these chemicals were designed to attack the nervous system of pests, which leads to overstimulation of the nerves and eventually death. So if you think about most of the chemical like Raid and all the very different Bayer products and all this, what it is, you see, hit the pests, and the pests will start to do like this, and the insect drop to the floor. But that's not, it's big for the pests. It's a lot for the pests. But imagine with us now, we're getting exposed to it over and over again. What's going to happen? Slowly or surely it builds up in our system, and then we start having nervous problem. Now notice here, what's happening to our society? What's one of the big things happening to the kids? Everybody focus on vaccination, and I'm not saying vaccination is not bad. It is, but I don't believe in vaccination. But here's the thing. What's happening to the kids? What's the biggest problem the kids nowadays are dealing with? Neurological problem, neuro problem. Why? Because we have so much chemicals that affect the nerves. Some of these chemicals were built as nerve gases for warfare. And some of them, like aspartame, NutraSweet, people eat it regular, and how the kids are being born with all kind of neurological problem. Where is that coming from? By getting up every day and saying, Mommy, I want to go to this fast food restaurant to eat some pesticide-filled, neurological agent-filled meat. So notice here, so we go to the most famous pesticide that is a chlorinated pesticide is what we call DDT. DDT was banned and has been banned, but it's to be used abroad. And here's a list of these pesticides on the board. DDT become the most famous one, but many times you can go down to your local hardware store and buy these pesticides, these insecticides or these fungicides or whatever it is, and you can spray it on your garden products. You can spray it on your land, and then you could partake of whatever you grow and kill yourself slowly or cause neurological problem. Notice how much of our society, they have a neuro problem. They're having a twitch as if they went to war. They didn't go to war. They're just eating all this pesticide in their food. And I put this up on the board. Again, human exposure occurs mainly through our diet, primarily from high-fat foods such as meat, poultry, dairy, and fish. It can happen with leafy green vegetables in agriculture, but as the rain falls on leafy green vegetables, it run off. If you wonder why I almost never partake of green leafy vegetables that are not organic, when I say almost never, because sometimes I eat at a restaurant and they do feed me, and sometimes I don't ask them, is this organic? Is it organic? So the point though is that so when you don't partake of green leafy vegetables also when you partake of them that are sprayed, although most of it is washed off, some of it is still on the vegetables. Have you ever buy leafy green vegetables and you rub it and you feel that oil on it? That's what I'm talking about. You see that oil? They're not organic and they have that oil in it. A lot of that is these chemicals they spray on it. You're going to partake of that, and that's when you're going to start to have these twitches and you're going to start feeling weird because they turn you weird. So if it's not organic, we don't eat it, especially leafy green, right? That's a side note. I know we're not talking about leafy green. We're talking about meat, right? But I just want to say that to you. And yet, we more so don't want to partake of things like dairy because all those things fill with these chlorinated pesticides. But as I say, next time you go into the store, go over to the leafy green and, I guess when nobody's looking, they rub it and you see you're rubbing off some oily substance, some chemicals on your hand. Don't eat that stuff. You eat organic. It's worth the money. It's worth the money for you. It's worth the money for your brain. Don't make them mess with your brain. All right, so these toxins they bioaccumulate. What that means is that they accumulate over time and they become more concentrated in our bodies. And so it's harder for our body to get it out. And so we want to avoid that. And these now affect our neurological system. It affects our immunology. It affects our endocrinological system. And it also affects our cardiovascular, respiratory, gastrointestinal, and other system. Notice again, I believe when we see things like coronavirus running, and we see it affecting poor people, don't think about it. If you think about that, it's affecting primary black people, just give it a break. It's getting the Midwest, where they eat most of these crazy food. So it's going to affect everybody that is poor, because what is known about poor people, they eat more of these chlorinated, contaminated foods. The cheaper the food is, the more you can buy if you're poor. But these food are grown with the most harsh chemicals. That's why you notice there's hardly no, I don't know if there's any health food store in poor communities. Because what they eat, they're cheap egg, cheap milk, cheap beef, cheap chicken, cheap pork. These things are filled with antibiotics, they're filled with chemicals, they're filled with all kind of stuff like that. That's why we stay away from that stuff. What do they affect? Exposure can result in adverse effects such as increased asthma and allergies. Come on now. So the milk itself is causing the asthma allergies because it blocks up the system, it blocks up the lungs. But also the chemical in it is stimulating and messing up the whole neurological system. So that's why we stay away from these cheap things. I remember one time I brought somebody shopping to a store to get them some natural products. And they say, Lloyd, you're paying for one thing of tofu, I can pay for a whole dozen eggs. And I look at them and say, man, education is really a good thing. Because when you're miseducated, you don't understand what you just said. You're saying you're going to eat that toxic thing. That thing going to kill you. And that person's like, all kind of mess. Notice here, chronic fatigue, type 2 diabetes, high risk of certain cancers, fertility and reproductive problems. Think about that, fertility and reproductive problems. Where they have the biggest problem with fertility, the most fertility clinic, is in the Midwest. Cognitive disorder, so the brain can't work properly, and the kids are coming up with cognitive disorder, thyroid problem, risk of atherosclerosis, obesity, and they've shown this. Your person can't maintain their weight. We're going to talk about obesity, how to overcome obesity, and autoimmune disease. Person have autoimmune, the body's attacking itself. Why the body attacking itself? Because the immune system see foreign matter that needs to be get rid of, and the body decides to say, I'm gonna get rid of it. The autoimmune system decides to get rid of it, and it's a problem. Notice here, I'm going to read a statement to you that was written over 100 years ago before, because some people say, I'm going to eat organic, farm-raised, natural foods, natural plant, natural animals. This here was written before there was any industrialization of farming, before these DDT and chlorinated and all these different chemicals came about. Notice here, written 100 years ago, written 1898, disease in cattle is making meat eating a dangerous matter. The Lord curses upon the earth, upon man, upon beasts, and upon fish, as transgression becomes almost universal. The curse will be permitted to become as broad and as deep as the transgression. Disease is contracted by the use of meat. The diseased flesh of these dead carcasses is sold in the marketplaces, and disease among men is the sure result. The Lord will bring his people into a position where they will not touch or taste the flesh of dead animals. There is no safety in eating of the flesh of dead animals. And in short time, milk and cow will also be excluded from the diet of God's commandment-keeping people. In short time, it will not be safe to use anything that comes from the animal creation. I tell you, we're long gone past the state where you look at tuberculosis, you look at all these things. This is why they have to pasteurize and homogenize the milk, because it's so contaminated. Cancers. Now I'm not going to spend much time here, but I put this on the board for your perusal to look at. Reason why, because I'm going to do some seminar in the upcoming months on cancer, because I want to show you what's really going on with cancer and how to overcome cancer. So the more meat in the diet, the more likely you will likely a cancer. The National Center Institute of American Cancer Society have now clearly shown that the incidence of several cancers increase with the amount of meat and fatty food. More meat, more cancer. More fatty food, more cancer and all kind of neurological disease. So it's seriously life-threatening. Cancer also come from a virus. I want to put that one there so you can see. I remember years back, people had challenged and denigrated Ellen G. White because she said cancer comes from, many cancers come from animals, and they're actually pathogens. And people say, oh no. And now somebody got here in 1956, somebody won a Nobel Peace Prize, a Nobel Prize winner for discovering that you can get your cancer straight from eating the animal. Straight from the animal. It's a straight source. Notice here, identical leukemia virus found. In 1968, scientists could verify 60 viruses that were known to cause cancer in every major group of animal. So 60 viruses that are known to cause cancer. So most cancers, you eat the cancer. Some cancers are caused by chemical, but most cancer, you're eating it from the animal. 60. This is old news. This is 1968. They knew this. And yet the American Cancer Society should have blazoned on its website saying most of your cancers are coming from, almost all your cancers are coming from either chemical or meat, and most of it is from meat. Of two viruses that can detect in human cancer victims, one is identical to the virus that caused leukemia in animals. But all day long, they're going to run with these kids. They're going to cry and bellyache, so these kids coming out with leukemia. And what has it proven? A weak immune system and eating chicken has been shown to cause leukemia in kids. But yet, what they do? They don't promote that. They don't talk about that because they don't want to hurt the chicken industry. But you look at weak immune system and leukemia will cover cancer soon. The whole creation, not a statement here, the whole creation involved, and today animal language on the curse, disease prevail among them in an alarming extent. Cancer, tumors are very often seen. You can see this on the animal. I know people tell me they raise animal, they can see the tumor growing, and they just cut the tumor out and just feed the rest of the carcass to the people. But you know with tumor is malignant in human being. Once malignancy, it started to spread everywhere. So you could do a surgery, cut the main area of the tumor out, the main cancer out, but it's already spread to the rest of the body. The person died after that. Same thing happened with the animals. So what happened? You go buy the animal, they kill it younger So the tumors are not fully seen, grown big, so you can be seen easily, but the whole body is filled with tumor. You eat it, you're eating the tumor, then you come down with tumor, and people are like, oh, I'm shocked, because they have not revealed this to you, but we telling you this here. The tissue of swine are people with living creatures. Yet, this living mass is eaten and relished by men and women. Tuberculosis consumption is communicated by the practice of meat eating, and thus disease is extended. Notice I covered this before. Now scientists have proven via the cow and via the cow's milk you get tuberculosis. But yet many people were shocked when they see this type of stuff. Cancer in animal soul, you can read this. You know, they have shown where they have like a head cancer on the cow. And what they do is cut off the head, destroy the head, or sell it to feed other animals. And they use the carcass of the head now of the cow and sell it to human beings. Cancer spread. So what you're doing, you're eating the cancer. So, and in 1 year, they kill over 2 million beef. Every year, they kill how many cows because they're filled with disease? You can read it. I put on the board. Cancer in fish. Cancer growth in fish increase. Livers and carcasses condemned for human consumption are regular use for food in fish hatcheries. And you can see this there, and I have the quote right there. You can read this. Not an increase in percentage of salmon in the Pacific Northwest are cancerous. No, sorry. So many fishes that are caught in the Pacific Northwest, they're so healthy, they come from healthy waterway filled with cancers. All right, these animals are diseased. Remember, if 100 years ago they were filled with cancers, imagine now. 100 years before industrialization, we're filled with cancer. The fish you see on the right there, I've talked about this before, so I won't stay here, but this fish that you see a picture of with a growth, a tumor growth coming out of his mouth, this fish was catched in 2015 in Pennsylvania, and it was found, it was a bass that had cancer. You can see the picture on the board right there. And yet, this is something that's going on. So people are catching these fish, and you find that the fish are cancerous, and people are eating their cancers and coming on with weird diseases, and it's because the fish is cancerous. Now, a statement I'm going to read to you here. I remember, just in case I don't do it, I don't have this on the board. They did this research where they went from the tip of Maine all the way to Key West on the east coast of the United States. And they sampled fish that were in the sea, and they found a large percentage of the fish that were sampled along the coastline in America all had various different cancers. But people say, oh, I'm catching the fish from the sea. Yeah, fish have cancers, and they're filled with other kind of dangerous chemicals. Imagine right now, every day, every minute in New York City, they're pumping out all that sewage, that coronavirus sewage into the sea. And the fish is out there deep in the sea eating that sewage. Then the fish is caught by the fishermen, and then they feed it back to the people in the city. This is normal. This is normally how things work. Physicians who claim to understand the human organism ought to not encourage their patients to subsist on the flesh of dead animals. They should point out the increased disease in the animal kingdom. The testimony of examiners is that very few animals are free from diseases, and that the practice of eating largely of meat is contracting diseases of all kinds, cancers, tumors, this other disease, scrofula, tuberculosis, and a number of other like afflictions. If men will subsist on the food that God has so abundantly provided without having it pass first through the animal and then into the organism, and become sinew and muscle, and then take it second hand by eating of the corpse, his health will be much better insured. As I say, if there's deadly disease in an animal, why would you eat the animal? These animals have been proven all to have deadly disease. And so what we find out is that when we eat certain diets, then we activate we can have certain viruses, and it makes our body more susceptible to viruses. And as we know, the more terrible the diet is, the more the damage that comes from animal eating. Another thing that happens with animal is that when you barbecue it, you have toxic chemicals similar to the chemical in cigarette. Or when you burn something, you're burning the animal, you're burning the cigarette. You can go back and watch that later on. And we will close with this one. I'm gonna go back and hold these two for you so that you can see this and you can pause it and read it for yourself. There's some slides I'm going through for those audio listening to me that I'm just gonna skip. I'll cover in future health presentation, but I'll put up on the board for those who want to read it. Why? Because I'd cover quite a few things about milk. That milk is a deadly poison. It causes atherosclerotic plaque. It's basically drinking milk that was destined for a calf. Us human being should not be partaking of it. And the same thing as I say, leukemia. Last thing I'll say to close. Antibiotic resistance. It's a topic in itself, but I just want to mention it here as another reason why you should think about plant-based diet. One of the things that they've been predicted that antibiotic-resistant diseases will destroy our health system. We see the pressure that our health system is under because of coronavirus. We believe and now is we know of areas where the whole hospitals are closing wards because they have to destroy the ward or the whole floor of the hospital, remove everything off it, bring it back down to basically the concrete, sterilize it, and then rebuild the ward because it's been infected with drug-resistant staph infection or various different type of drug-resistant diseases. Drug-resistant diseases on the rise. And as we see this, we believe that this is an omen of terrible things to come. And so I put this here because a lot of the antibiotic resistance that we're going through as human beings is because we partake of animals that have been overfed and fed on a daily basis antibiotics. We take the antibiotics into our system and we become antibiotic resistant. The viruses and the bacteria, primarily the bacteria here, they become more potent and now we have nothing to kill them. Bacteria are even becoming resistant to chlorine, believe it or not. And so the chlorine is not as effective as it used to be because we overuse these chemicals. So keep in mind that one of your best ways to protect yourself is to wash your hands. Last slide here, Exodus 16, verse 1, 2, and 3. Or second to last, Exodus 16, verse 1, 2, and 3. It says, "And they took journey from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came unto the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they departed out of the land of Egypt." So remember, when the Lord led the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt, what was his desire for them? One of his major desire for them to elevate them was to give them a plant-based diet. And so God had commanded Moses to instruct the people that your meat is fruits, nuts, seeds, and vegetables, and then grain was added. So the Lord desired to give them a plant-based diet. The Lord desired you and I to have a plant-based diet because the Lord wants to reduce our chance of getting diseases 10 times. And the Lord also wants to reduce the chance when there's viral new infections running around, contagious disease running around, that our immune system are stronger, that we will not die and suffer from these diseases. That's God's desire for you as spiritual Israel. The rest of the society might not see this as important, but for us, we understand. And we know that you can be younger, healthier, stronger, better in mind. You can be 10 times wiser than the wisest man in our country that run the country because you don't eat meat. Your brain is not clogged up. That's what God wants for you. The children of Israel, they were given that and they rejected it. Notice here in verse 2. "And the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said unto them, Would to God we had died in the land, died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full. For ye have brought us forth into the wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." Now remember, God took care of them, God blessed them, God delivered them. But yet, what they wanted was what? They wanted the flesh pots. They would prefer to be back in Egypt, under bondage, under harsh labor, being abused and killed, their firstborn being murdered. All these things happened to them as long as they could get some meat. And I know people have that attitude. They say, no, we're going to die of hunger if we don't get some leukemia-filled chicken and some mad cow cows. And if we don't get our oysters with our various different bacteria, we're going to die. We can't live like this. But I tell you, you can live a healthier life. You can live a more prosperous life. You can come in contact with the coronavirus and live and not die. You can come in contact with all kind of stuff and live and not die if you avoid the meat. If you avoid the cancer-filled meat, you'll be amazed that you will be younger. I tell people you can knock years off your body if you just simply don't subsist of dead carcass. Don't subsist of this type of stuff. The children of Israel, they rebelled. They said, no, we ain't going to live like that. We want some flesh from Egypt. And what was the end result? The Lord gave them quail. And while they were there eating, gluttonously eating all that quail, the Lord struck them down because they're rebel. So many people say, oh yeah, but the Lord allows certain things. I'm going to tell you, God's perfect will and God's will where he allows you because you rebel is not the same thing. We don't want to live because God said, well, you know, this is an emergency food. You can't eat it. Just eat the cleaner thing and drain the blood and do all that. We want to live off of God's perfect will. God's desire is for his last day people to not have to kill anything, not have to hunt anything. Don't be running down no chicken and chopping its head off. But just to eat off a diet that is superior. As I say, in the upcoming weeks, we're going to talk about how exactly, specifically get into some of the science of it and some of the naturality of it. Why is it that you can get a healthier body, you can be stronger and avoid these weird diseases that are floating around? How? You don't have to be dying of no weird disease where you're rotting alive. Praise the Lord. In 3 John chapter 1 verse 2, 3 John chapter 1 verse 2, it says, beloved, God love us. God wants us to be healthy and be in the best of health. I wish above all things that you may prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth. God wants you to prosper spiritually. God wants you to prosper financially. God wants you to prosper health-wise. God don't want you to be dying of these weird Egyptian diseases. These weird diseases because of the standard American diet. These weird diseases because of all the chemicals they're pumping into nature and into the animals. God don't want you to die of some weirdness that you're losing your mind and you're still young. Knowing people 50-something years old having all kind of weird neurological diseases, all kind of weird mental health diseases. That is not necessary. But you're not going to be able to partake of these dead carcasses and avoid those diseases. You're not going to eat those cheap food that is being produced by a lot of poor people and not die of those diseases. So I pray God may bless you to this end. I pray God's spirit upon you. That we're going to talk about this evening, especially we're going to talk about this evening, self-control. That you may be able to accept the temperance that the Holy Spirit tried to bring you. That you might be able to overcome and get rid of this type of wickedness that they're doing to the animals. I remember reading something a few years back where some farmers came up with this idea to make the cows heavier. They start feeding them, they mix cement into the feed. These are the type of wickedness that's going on in society. And what's happening? You're going to eat that cement-filled cow. What's going to happen to you? Imagine if somebody had eaten those pork that was coming from China, that was from the African swine flu. They're dead, and they take the dead carcasses, preserve it, and ship it to the Americans. They're going to love it. Now, where was that going to end up? It was going to end up probably in some Chinese supermarket where Chinese were going to eat it too. And also some other poor people in some poor communities going to eat this pork because they go, oh, look at it, we can get, beef for 5 cents, a pound. And they're going to eat it, and then they're going to die of some weird disease, and everybody's going to be like, it seems like there's a new disease coming out of Africa. Africa, it's coming from China. So we have to be careful with that. So I tell you, if you eat a plant-based, especially naturally grown organic diet, you'll avoid a lot of disease. So I pray that God may bless you to this end, and we'll sing our closing hymn number 430, Joy by and by. May God bless you as we sing hymn number 430, Joy by and by.
Please rise as we turn to our closing hymn, hymn number 430. Oh, there'll be joy when the work is done, joy when the reapers gather home, bringing the sheaves at set of sun to the new sing forever, Christ our King, in the New Jerusalem. Joy, joy, there'll be joy by and by. Joy, joy, where the joys never die. Joy, joy, for the day draweth nigh, when the workers gather home. Pure are the joys that await us there, many the golden mansions fair. Jesus himself doth them prepare, in the New Jerusalem. Joy, joy, there'll be joy by and by. Joy, joy, where the joys never die. Joy, joy, for the day draweth nigh, when the workers gather home. Amen. Kindly bow your heads as we have our closing prayer. Dear kind Father, Lord, I pray that you will be with each one here and online. Lord, I pray that you will ask us to follow your will, Lord, not your permissive will, but your perfect will. And that you will help us, Lord, to follow in everything that we eat and drink, the things we do, so that we can have healthy temples, Lord, and healthy vessels to render service for you. And Lord, for those who might be online right now who are struggling with their decision, I ask that you might give them strength and give them hope, Lord, and give them faith and peace that if they follow your words, if they follow your directions, that they will be able to reap the blessings that come with being obedient. I ask that you might continue to be with us through these Sabbath hours, and that you will continue to bless your people. In Jesus' name, amen.